He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, Alex and friends, today with probably my other most frequent guest on the show, aside from Emma Jo Morris, John Carney is here with me, and he is our economic and finance editor of Breitbart News. He writes the Breitbart Business Digest, which all of you should read each and every day. He's a terrific writer, a terrific piece of brain power, and just a all-around exciting and observant American to hear from. This is my interview with John Carney. All right, nothing gives me more pleasure than to see John Carney, one of the smartest people in American media and the economic expert on MAGAnomics. I think he understands it better than anyone. Really, that's it. Number one guy. John, I'm kind of looking at it as a 6-month check-in on this administration, seeing how things are going. How are the tariffs going? How is the sort of resetting people's opinion about populist economics? How are we doing as individuals and as families? And this is one thing where I am nervous about given the interest rates where they are, given the amount of debt people are carrying, given the size and scope of government, it's so hard to reel in. I want to get a sense on how families are doing too, but let's start with big picture. Give me your sense of Trump's MAGA, America First economic policy, and give me your evaluation of that thus far.
So the terrific thing is that it is going very, very well, and it's going at Trump's speed this time. In the first term, we had to wait years before we got to tariffs. Remember, we had to, they went through this entire disastrous Obamacare repeal thing. So we didn't get tariffs and we didn't get tax cuts really till pretty late in the game. Trump came out swinging with tax cuts and tariffs immediately. This has really reset the economic conversation in the U.S. And there was a period early on, right after he started announcing tariffs, and the press was overwhelmingly negative about it. You got you had the initial surge in consumer confidence from Trump getting elected. Then you had a decline, and frankly, it was pretty severe. The good thing, though, about doing this early is that consumer confidence started to bounce back really quickly when it became apparent that tariffs were not raising consumer prices, that the inflation fears were way overdone. The labor sector is doing very well. We've continued to add jobs. We've had the June jobs report was not that strong, but it wasn't alarmingly weak. The unemployment rate is down to 4.1%. So, and we're starting to see that in surveys. The consumer sentiment is up. When Americans are asked, do you expect to be better off next year than you are now, a larger percentage say yes than they have in 4 or 5 years. So, and business surveys show business confidence is rising. The tax cuts will help a lot. So I think that this has been a very good start, in part because Trump learned the lessons of the first term. He didn't wait to get this stuff going. He, started running and never stopped.
So let's talk about prices in particular. Which prices do you feel like are most important to highlight? Obviously, I'm guessing eggs is going to be first because we had so much egg talk. But when we're talking about inflation, is there any inflation remaining? If so, where is it? Are there any points of concern?
So, yes, first of all, eggs. I love the egg story. We talked about this a long time ago, Alex, where I thought it was incredibly foolish for the Democrats to attack Donald Trump when he first came into office on the price of eggs. I think it was 11 days into his presidency. So it's January 26th. Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Ro Khanna, like a whole bunch of Democrats wrote a letter complaining that the price of eggs was still too high. And they said, you promised to bring down the price of eggs. And they really thought this was like a gotcha, right? Like, oh, we got them. Those eggs. And of course, eggs are down 61% since Donald Trump took office. So, and it was obvious this was going to happen. They were foolish to attack Donald Trump on this. What we've also seen is that inflation has come down a lot. We've got numbers like on the producer price index, it came in at 0.0 for June. We got if you take like the Trump coming into office till this summer, annualized rate of inflation, it's below 2%. So inflation has done really well. I think groceries are, very important to people's mental psychology of how inflation is going. And those have not had a lot of inflation. The price of gasoline has come down a lot and is likely to keep coming down. I mean, we just had the announcement that Saudi Arabia is actually producing more than their OPEC quota, right? Like,
Wow.
so the other countries sometimes, go above their quota. A lot of them come below. Saudi Arabia is producing more than they had, agreed to produce, in part because Donald Trump has convinced them that the United States is their friend and they want a strong United States and they want to make sure that the world gets a lot of cheap, inexpensive energy. That's going to be a huge part of the U.S. economy, not just for now, but going forward. It will make people feel better about the economy and it gives them more money to spend on other parts of the economy. Remember when the price of gasoline is high, that helps a little bit the oil sector in the U.S. because you'll get some more drilling and some more employment. But for most people, it actually is just like a tax, right? It's more you have to spend when you fill up the gas tank, which means
Yes.
less food for your kids, less clothes for your kids, less, one less movie that you get to go to because you spent so much up the gas.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the price of cars and autos right now, because so I'm out in California and it's still $5 a gallon for the premium, which I need for my cars. And
you guys need a revolution, man. It's like $3 on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, but I think someone did the math and it's like $1.20 per gallon in extra fees in California. Do you have that committed to memory, John, what that's about?
That sounds about right to me. It's like $1.25.
Yeah.
You also have a problem that's not just directly related to California's tax, which is the East Coast is able to benefit from refineries that get from oil taken out of North Carolina that gets put into a pipeline that goes down to the Gulf Coast, gets refined down in the Gulf Coast, turned it, and then shipped all around the East Coast. California has no pipeline from the rest of America into California because the climate change alarmists will not allow a pipeline to be built westward. You could build the pipeline. It could be there. We could be supplying California with oil coming from the American Midwest. It's really hard to do now, and that also helps elevate the price just because there's not a good pipeline to get the oil from North Carolina to California.
Wow. So who's stopping us from doing this? And is this something Trump can do? Or do you feel confident Trump has made this game on?
Yeah, no, I think Trump can do it. I don't think it's something he can do right away. It probably takes some the Supreme Court, frankly, has made it a little easier. They've rolled back some of these regulations. They've said that Trump can roll back regulations. We probably need Congress to step in. In some ways, Congress, I would say one of the things that's happened during the Trump administration so far is that he has moved so fast that Congress has almost gotten a free pass. He's done so much with executive orders, but Congress really actually does need to act. They should affirm Trump's tariff authority. They should write a lot of the deregulation into law so that it can't be reversed when a Democrat comes in. They're doing that with a lot of the spending rescissions, right? Trump wanted to bring down spending, and the Republicans are passing spending rescission, which is good. But on regulation, on tariff authority, they really actually should pass laws to make sure, one, that these changes aren't vulnerable to legal challenges, but two, that they're not easily reversed if we get a Democrat president in office in the future, because that actually makes people pretty hesitant. I mean, would you want to invest billions of dollars to build a pipeline that may take, 5 years to build across the desert, right? You're going through some pretty harsh, climate.
No, it's tough because you never know when a Democrat's going to come in and shut it down.
Exactly. So you need to enact it into law that you're allowed to do this. If you're just doing it because Trump gave you a permit, you're really worried that, President Cory Booker or whoever their nominee is going to, Pete Buttigieg is going to come in and stop it. when you're, 2/3 of the way there in 2029, that would be a disaster. That holds back a lot of investment. But on the other end, we are seeing the investment. We're seeing things like the investment in rare earth minerals, very important to be doing that. And that was something we hadn't seen for a decade. So we're seeing people being willing to invest in American mineral, strategic energy, commodity production. We're going to probably see a lot more copper production in the U.S. These are all really good and important things.
So I want to ask a little bit about the rare earths, because I was just reading about how there's this mad dash to try to get as many rare earths from China and rare earth magnets from China as humanly possible right now, because Trump is changing the rules and people are going to try to get as many as they can. And maybe there's this last minute going out of business sale in terms of our rare earth deals with China. Do you feel like we can make a hard pivot on a lot of these industries? Because some things, when you talk about pharmaceutical manufacturing, auto manufacturing, I mean, you got to build these plants. It's when we're talking about, we're going to drill, great, but we also got to build the pipelines and I mean, the infrastructure. Yeah, the infrastructure I was looking at, I have an acquaintance who's in the fracking industry, and the infrastructure necessary to frack and to get what you're able to produce around the country, around the world it's intense. Like, it's a huge feat of engineering just to get the stuff. Okay, now you've extracted it. What do you do? Do you see any pain points potentially in the economy where we're not necessarily prepared for MAGAnomics?
I do think that we need to make sure that that our permitting process to build factories has been intentionally hamstrung by climate change regulation. A lot of times with almost no real concern. Look, I don't want factories polluting rivers, killing wildlife. I'm a fisherman myself. I am a big conservationist. So I'm not advocating let's just destroy the land. Of course not. But we've gone overboard. I mean, even some Democrats now agree that we have hampered our ability to grow important industries with too much regulation. So the Trump administration is doing a great job of finding those pain points, right, and making sure we carve them out. I think Congress needs to then step in and say, okay, we need to now write that into the law directly so that it can't get reversed. That will give businesses the confidence to be able to do it. And the other thing you need to do, and this is something that Trump has done very well, which is make sure that there are agreements in place. Like the Pentagon agreed to buy basically all of the production of the new rare earth minerals plant that's being built. That's important because if you don't have something like that, people are afraid that what China will do is suppress the price of rare earth minerals to put anybody who invested it doing it in the U.S. out of business. That's what they're trying to do with solar. That's what they're trying to do with electric cars. They're trying to do it with semiconductors. They will engage in predatory pricing to try to crush the price. So not to keep it cheap forever. If they just wanted to give us cheap semiconductors till the end of the world and they didn't have the ability to raise the price or frankly cut us off altogether, I'd be fine with it. But that's not true. They will raise the price, and in a strategic emergency, they'll cut us off altogether. So we need to do it domestically. We can only do that if we protect our industries from China's ability to dump things at below market cost onto our consumers.
Okay, so I think this is a very important cautionary point. So let's take some industries. You can go case by case, highlights, lowlights. Where do you think we're doing? Give me some examples of things you feel like we're maybe exceeding or hitting expectations, and maybe some examples of places where there's cause for some concern or there's more we can do.
So I think right now our auto companies are still too engaged in the fantasy that they will be able to sell a lot of cars in China. I think we need to disabuse them of this. Tell them, frankly, look, we know, we understand what you were trying to do. You wanted to, China promised you could build there. That made them effectively for years Chinese lobbyists. We need to make sure that they understand that that's not going to happen. We've done a great job with steel. We're bringing Canada along on steel tariffs. What we need to make sure we do is make sure the tariffs are high enough that we have robust steel production in the U.S. Steel, copper is the other one. When you look at what's happening in things like AI, the amount of electricity that we will need to transport around the United States is incredible. You can only do that with immense amounts of copper. That makes copper one of the most, it's funny, right? It's one of the oldest metals people have been working with, but it is now one of the most technologically, strategically important metals. So we really need to make sure that we're protecting copper. I'd say another area we really need to think about is shipbuilding. We have to revive America's ability to build state-of-the-art shipping. We don't really have that right now. Trump administration has been pushing towards that, but we're not there yet. We still have progress we need to make in shipping. Now, some people will say, well, we could just buy the ships from North Korea or not North Korea, obviously, but from South Korea or from somewhere else. And I'll just say, no, we can't, right? Like, again, for these really important strategic things, we need the capacity. We didn't win World War II because somebody else built our ships. We won it because we built the ships. We didn't win the Cold War because we relied on somebody else to build submarines and battleships. We did it because we could do it. We will have to be able to build ships in the future.
So in a post-pandemic world, do you feel like that we've done a good enough job trying to figure out ways to insulate ourselves with it? Because do you have made any progress with pharmaceuticals? Have you made progress with making sure that we're manufacturing everything essential here?
Not yet. We've made some progress. I'd say pharmaceuticals is the weakest spot so far. We're entirely reliant on the rest of the world for pharmaceuticals, from everything from like over-the-counter things that should be really easy to make. Aspirin, right? Like, it's not a new technology. Clearly, we can make it here. To more high-tech drugs, we're severely dependent on foreign imports. And a lot of people say, well, what's the big deal? The EU makes them. We could just import them from them. But what happens when we have a disagreement with the EU? What happens if the EU doesn't like our Israel policy, for instance, and they say, okay, we're not going to sell you your statins, right? Or they could use their control, or India, right? What if India doesn't like our policy towards South Korea? They may think we're too friendly towards them, or they don't like our tariff policy. We can't allow other countries to have a chokehold on this. We at least need the minimal capacity to be able to make this stuff. One of the things I think people forget, we saw this in rare earths, is that when you allow another country to completely, or a group of other countries to completely take over a business, like making pharmaceuticals, you don't just lose like the physical capacity to do it, you lose the human capacity. We don't graduate people trained in making this stuff from our colleges because there's no jobs for them to do it. We need to do that here in order for us to have a well-trained workforce that knows how to make pharmaceuticals, that knows how to turn rare earths into magnets, all of this stuff. We need the knowledge base here. And if we give that up, it is very hard. It's not something like you can just turn on the lights one day in the factory again. Nobody even knows where the light switch is.
Okay, so let's take a look at the rest of the world. How's the rest of the world doing adjusting to Trumpian policies? It feels like Europe is starting to understand that Trump is a reality and he's not just a phase we're going to grow out of. He marks a reset in American politics. China is always going to struggle with Trump, and it feels like they are. The South American countries, many of them socialist, are either so some of the non-socialist ones are wanting to cut deals with Trump, and the rest seem to be trying to figure out ways to oppose him. What are the interesting stories internationally that you think are most noteworthy as Trump tries to recut foreign trade deals all around the world?
So the big picture is no retaliation. I mean, Trump is saying
very
to
good point.
everybody,
We blew through this too fast. I love this point. Go ahead. All right, we know that good coffee is kind of easy to find. There's a lot of good coffee out there, but great coffee, that's a different story. And when I was introduced to Crockett Coffee, I knew this was something special. This is roasted to perfection in small batches on purpose by experts who love the taste of great coffee and are conscientious about how it's made and who's making it. It's roasted in our nation's heartland and it's delivered fresh to your home. When you enjoy Crockett Coffee, you're also supporting an anti-communist, pro-American brand of coffee founded by our friends Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, who are good broadcasters and are apparently dang good at making a cup of coffee as well. The perfect type of thing to sip at a mountain campfire like a Western settler or in your office while you're doing a podcast. It is just really high quality stuff. You guys know I'm a coffee snob, married to an Italian. I like to hit that dark roast. They also sent me some mild roast, which was delicious. They got a light roast. They got a decaf. They got a mushroom organic blend. That's the new hotness. They got K-Cups. Lots of different options for you. And part of your support goes to Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which is a great way to give back and remind people that Crockett Coffee, people there, they pledge to never forget. Easy. Go online, crockettcoffee.com. Crockett like it as in Davy Crockett. crockettcoffee.com. Use my first name, Alex. You get 20% off your first order. That's crockettcoffee.com. Use my name, Alex, as the promo code for 20% off. Good people and a dang good cup of coffee. You guys know I would not endorse it if it wasn't quite delightful.
Yeah, that, Trump is saying, remember when Trump first started to raise tariffs, everybody said, that's it. If he does that, everybody will come back and tariff us just as much, equally at least. And that's not happening. Trump is the best deal you could get from Donald Trump on trade is a 10% tariff with zero coming from them, right? So in other words, we'll impose a 10% tariff on you. That's the best. He's saying to a lot of countries, 20% will be the best. And again, they have to go to zero on their tariffs. So he's totally overcome this everybody else will retaliate. A huge part of that is what you were just saying, is the realization that this is a reset. I mean, if you look at polling numbers, I was just looking at these among Republican support for tariffs, they're through the roof. This is a party that used to have Ben Sasse and Jeff Flake and Pat Toomey, Orrin Hatch. These guys were really deeply anti-tariff. Where are those guys today? They're gone. Right, we got rid of the anti-tariff crowd. They have been sent out into the wilderness. The pro-tariff people, the grassroots of the Republican Party is all on board with tariffs. They overwhelmingly support tariffs. I was looking at a poll that showed that they even support tariffs if it means prices go up on people. They still support tariffs. So this, by the way, is not like a deviation. The deviation was actually the Ben Sasses and the Jeff Flakes. The Republican Party was, from Lincoln to Coolidge, was a pro-tariff party. It gave that up as part of a Cold War strategy, frankly, to enrich the rest of the world. We've talked about that a million times. But that war is over. The Cold War is over. We are now the pro-tariff party again. Pat Buchanan had called the retreat from tariffs the great betrayal. And I hope Pat watches us and watches your podcast because, Pat, you won. You're right. We've ended the great betrayal. We now have the great revival.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's an amazing moment. And it just does, it feels like, we really helped Ben Sasse get elected to the Senate, whatever it must have been 12 or so, 13 years ago. And it's one of these things where he kind of had outsidery vibes in the campaign and immediately got to Washington and immediately tried to make the establishment cool. And he was so uncool and smug and cringe inducing. And it's just wild that he's just such a blast in the past because that really was the direction they wanted to move the party. And now in this Trumpian
When you hear me name
world.
those names, right, Alex, we've almost forgotten about Sasse and Flake.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it was great. It was really amused me. I had a nice smile when you brought that up. Okay, but so let's talk about our counterparts on the left before we go micro. Are they offering anything? Because I feel like they're in this mode where they identify problems that the Mamdanis of the world. Groceries are too expensive. Well, let's give them away for free. And it doesn't feel like any of their answers have evolved over the years. They're always just really dumb, just basic Marxism, and that's where they go to solve all of our problems. And I just wanted your take.
Well, I'd say it's even worse than that. They have now become so instinctively anti-Trump that they can't bring themselves to support things that have overwhelming support among the American people. That, when you look at these polls, the same polls I was just talking about Republicans supporting tariffs, the Democrats, which used to be at least divided on tariffs, are now fanatically opposed to tariffs. And weirdly enough, if you ask Democrats why they oppose tariffs, it's because they think those tariffs are too mean to foreign countries, which is like a very weird reason for an American politician to oppose tariffs, right? Oh, it's just not fair to Mexico. You're like, okay, whose country are you running to run, right? You should be concerned with Americans first. They haven't really come up with a coherent response. And the responses they did come up with are failing, right? They remember their best response to tariffs that they came up with was, it's going to be a national sales tax. Americans will pay 20% more on everything they buy because Trump will impose tariffs. And that didn't happen. And in fact, it might have been useful for Trump to have them claim that, because now he can, now that was right out in the open. We know exactly what they said, and they said it all the time, and it proved wrong. That just made even clearer how right Trump was about the effects tariffs had. So I don't think the Democrats really have much by way of, real policy innovation that they've come up with. I think they will. They're not going to stay dumb forever. And maybe when Trump's not running for office anymore, they'll recover a little bit. But I don't know, man. I'm starting to see them go from Trump derangement syndrome to Vance derangement syndrome. They may just be stuck in this politics of personal hatred rather than developing policies to deal with problems Americans have.
It'll be interesting how their decision to just reject everything Trump puts forward and as a political tactic, it's because it's very boring and low IQ. And I'm just wondering if it's actually strategically stupid as well, as opposed to trying to play along, get some credit, frame it as though maybe the Republicans could do certain things better, but not everything's horrible. But this whole posture that anything we do, no taxes on tips, and they just give that to us, and just you guys just take it, and it's the trying to have equitable trade, which is my word for it. Oh, well, I forget what Trump's word is, but I like equitable because it's been inequitable for this country. Yeah, it's the type of stuff that they would have thought of 30 years ago, and they would have figured out a way to take some ownership. And instead, we're here where they're just no, you guys just take all those ideas. It could really age badly for them.
It used to be, I remember when the left did WTO protests and they advocated buying fair trade coffee, and, they weren't these people who were, they fanatically pro-trade, but the pro-foreign manufacturing. They've moved, they used to care about this stuff, and they've completely given it up. I think it is a big mistake on their part. I don't think it's going to work strategically. And I think in particular, Trump is going to be very lucky because, as I was saying, the American economy appears to be strengthening rather than weakening. That's important. The Federal Reserve is likely to start cutting interest rates, not this summer, but, September, November, December. That will also give some extra juice to the economy, which means that Trump is going to be going into 2026, the midterm elections, which are usually terrible for incumbent presidents, with a lot of economic strength behind him, and Democrats who really have no policy to oppose him.
All right, so let's go. We're not just America first, John. We're Americans first. So I want to talk about people and how are the people doing, because it feels like I'm just on just general vibes. It feels positive. It feels like Obviously, a lot of grocery inflation has stopped. Gas prices are down. There's a lot of good signs, but it's still slow. I was stopped at the Whole Foods market over the weekend by someone who listened to the show, and I asked them how they were doing, and they said that, well, I'd like interest rates to be lower, and they're not lower yet. And that was the first response. And I thought that was a really telling thing. So, Trump's in, but it's not like you get everything you want right away and all the progress doesn't occur right away. And I'm concerned about the debt, but not just the government debt, just people in general floating their whole lifestyle on credit cards. And I just don't know if they're going to catch up. So how are we doing?
So I'll go through a couple of negatives that you just named, and then I'll get to the positive developments. So the negatives are the housing market is in trouble because interest rates have been very high for very long, and that really hurts home affordability. It also hurts people's ability to buy things like cars, right? Obviously, the interest rates are very high, and then people who have been running high student, it increases people's student loan payments. It increases what they owe on their credit cards. It does put a strain on people's family, and it has been high for a long time. So yes, the high interest rates are troubling to people. There's also, I think, a bit of a fear because tariffs are a new policy. Like we had some tariffs under Trump, particularly on China, but frankly, we haven't had the kind of broad tariffs that Trump is introducing now. And I think until people get used to those being in place, that will continue to create economic anxiety. That's just a fact. You introduce a new policy and people will be nervous about it. On the other hand, when you look at here's the good numbers. Real wages are up a lot. Remember, we saw real wages, meaning wages after inflation, fall year after year when Biden was president because inflation was so high. We brought down inflation, but wages are rising faster than inflation. That is great that people are getting raises, not getting raises that then go away to pay for things that are more expensive. They're actually able to afford more things, right? Which is terrific. Employment for Americans. Under Biden, all of the net job growth was going to foreigners. We've reversed that. Now the net job growth is going to Americans. That's very important. It makes people feel like the country is working for their fellow Americans rather than for people coming over the border. I think, frankly, the fact that not just that we're deporting people, but that the border crossings have fallen so low gives people a sense that the country is no longer out of control. Right? Things were when we had millions of people every couple months coming over the border, it really felt like, what kind of country do we have? How can we possibly stay safe if they can't just keep people from crossing the border? Now that we've stopped that, I think that is also a boost to people's hopes, and it will pay off in the economy because it means young men in particular will find it easier to get jobs that will pay decent wages, that will allow them to marry earlier, have families, buy homes. Like the American dream is becoming possible again, and I think we're going to see that in the numbers. So yes, there's still some economic stress out there, and I think there will be for quite some time. I mean, frankly, I think people are still stressed because of the financial crisis and then COVID, right? Like we went through like a horrible financial crisis that left people stressed. Then we had the pandemic and lockdowns. It will take a long time to get over those, but I think we're shifting back in the right direction.
I think it's very important to also remind people that the Biden inflation is really the problem here. And it's that's the reason why rates are high. And that's why you're getting a bunch of money if you run any debt whatsoever getting siphoned off every month because of the interest rates that are due to Biden. So just a reminder, John, the last line of questions for today is, how are American corporations reacting to the end of the woke moment and the revival of Americana, Trumpism? And I'll give you this is a classic Steve Bannon. I'm give you an assignment on the air. I'm reading some fresh quotes how Detroit's big three automakers are bringing back gas guzzlers. Listen to this. This is including they're reviving the Hemi V8, which was one of our best engines. It was in the Dodge Ram and in the Jeep Grand Cherokee, stuff like that. Those are coming back. 5.7 liter engines coming back to just for commercial cars. So Tim Kuniskis, the CEO of Ram Brand, said, "We own it. We got it wrong. We are fixing it," talking about cutting back on the gas guzzler model. Rella Suskin, who is from Morningstar, she reports that it was really the focus on electric vehicles for Dodge. The company had focused on a new electric version model. However, this does not speak to the core customer. The core customer doesn't want electric. The core customer wants a big gas guzzler, and people are starting to understand this. I have been speaking with everyone about this viral Nike ad where they're celebrating fatherhood now with Scotty Scheffler, the golfer, with his kid. It's an unbelievable ad. So what's going on here, John? I mean, this is deeply, deeply positive. I think it comes from a cynical place in the sense that I think it's just about money, but I don't think the motivation matters as much as the fact that this is happening.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I would say is the motivation for the motivation, right? Like what corporations realized was that America was not the place that the left-wing activists described it. We were not the country of Black Lives Matter, DEI, a Green New Deal. That was a small fringe movement in America that had a moment, but is not what America really, that like the left always likes to say, that's not who we are, right? What they realized is that all that electric vehicles and, the ungendered person playing golf is not who we are, right? Like the dad playing golf, the kid touching the golf club, like that is who we are. Americans want, believe that the ordinary person leading an ordinary life is actually good, right? That this isn't something that needs to be overcome, but that the dad playing golf and bringing his son to the golf course is something to be celebrated. And I think what we're seeing across the board is corporations waking up to this. They are saying, we went too far. We are trying to rebuild ourselves in a way. And frankly, Hollywood is not quite there yet. They're still, they're retreating. They're trying to get away from their far wokeness. But like the manufacturing corporate America, the services corporate America, they are no longer pushing the left-wing agenda they were, because they really believed, and partly because they were convinced by some of the people who work for them and some of the outsider groups, that's what Americans wanted. The re-election of Donald Trump and his popularity have shown people that what people really want is not this far left stuff. They like things like, the "you've already won" slogan that is on that Nike ad of the kid with his father.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, good. It feels like do we want to give a grade for the first 6 months? I mean, it's kind of trite, but why not?
Yeah, I'll say I'll give it an A-. The A-. So why the minus, right?
How do we get to an A? Yeah.
Yeah. How we get to an A is that we need to keep going. That it's like we started from a really bad grade. We need to keep going. We'll get to an A when Donald Trump gets to replace Jerome Powell as Fed president. And then we will get a Fed president in there who's not making policy based on a, hatred of Donald Trump and tariffs, but is making policy based on what the American economy needs. I think that gets us to America to an A.
This might make more sense for a Breitbart Confidential show, John, but we got to do the definitive history of Jerome Powell and his confounding tenure at the Fed. Even though he looks like every guy in Washington, he's had a very strange run. And I think we need to do a deep dive and get that out there for someone. All right, John Carney, the Breitbart Business Digest is a unbelievably wonderful newsletter that John does 99% of the work on that, and I do the other 1%. So extra endorsement there. And at Carney. Believe it or not, he got at Carney on Twitter. Check that out. Everything he writes at Breitbart News is great. Thank you, John. Thank you, Misty. Thanks to all of you in the audience for telling 10,000 friends and family members about the show. And I'll talk to you next time.